All right, let's talk about some key terms. I'll let you know up front that this particular subject is a lot of key terms. And one of the reasons we have to fumble through some of these key terms is because to talk about other concepts, you got to have the first terms. So we're going to have a lot of vocabulary words in this section. The first one we're going to look at is analysis. Basically, this is breaking down an observation or theory into simpler concepts in order to understand it. Okay? If you're trying to shoot a bullet far, far away, there's actually a lot of things that can be broken down to figure out, if you want to figure out scientifically where that round is going to land. There are a lot of factors that come into play. You know, you've got the air temperature, you've got air density, you've got, obviously your meteorological factors such as wind, things like that. You've got gravity, you've got the angle of projection, its initial velocity, and of course, as it goes farther, it's going to slow down. There's a lot of things that can go in scientifically to figuring out what happens when you shoot a gun and a bullet goes from here to, a mile away. There's a whole lot of factors involved in figuring that out. That would be analysis. If we broke it down into, all those little elements, meteorological stuff, the type of powder that you're using, the moisture in the air, all these kind of things. If we broke all of that down to analyze how that round should, roughly how it should fall as it's coming out, that's what that would be. That would be an analysis. All right. Another term is paradigm. Paradigms is 20 cents where I come from, but this is a different kind of paradigms. All right. Paradigm is a logically consistent view of the world and observations made in it. Now, I don't want you to confuse that with worldview, and I can see where, frankly, it can be very easily interchanged, but paradigm is a little bit different the way it gets used. Paradigm shift is really what we're going to be talking about later. But a paradigm has to do with looking at the world in a consistent way, and an example I use is Copernicus revolution. This would be actually an example of a paradigm change or shift. But a paradigm is typically thought of in these kind of terms: the way we look at the world, the way we look at the universe. For example, when we realize that there are atoms that make up the world, that's a whole other way of looking at things than might have been previously looked at. Although we talked about the atomists that have been around for a long time, people have believed that was the way the universe was made up. But Copernicus, the whole idea that the world was flat, for example, and then of course that we discovered that the Earth is not the center of the universe. These are major paradigm shifts that took place that some people had a hard time adjusting to historically. Of course the world is flat. Well, then we figured out, no, that's not it. And then we figured out that the universe was no longer, that the Earth actually traveled around the sun and not vice versa. So these are examples of paradigm shifts that have taken place in our history. They're kind of concrete examples for you. So I want you to have those particular key terms down because we're going to see them come up later on. All right? Everybody got that? Okay. Falsifiability. We're going to see somebody that is an advocate of falsifiability. Also known as refutability. You need to know that. Falsifiability is synonymous with refutability. Refutability. That's the logical possibility that an assertion can be shown false by an observation or experiment. Being falsifiable does not necessitate being false. But if it is false, then this can be shown by observation or experiment. Are you getting that? Do you understand? It's not that something is false, but if it is false, we can prove it empirically. We can show that that is the case. It is, in fact, false. Alright? This word is a very, very key term in contemporary science world because, as we'll see, some say that this is what distinguishes science from metaphysics, which we've already touched on. We've already talked about metaphysics. Metaphysics being all of that which is in reality, what all of reality consists of. You know, what is the stuff of the universe or beyond. This is an interesting concept because this is what some will say science is limited to. Science can only talk about this. You can't talk about the supernatural, God, spiritual stuff, or anything like that in the world of science because these things are not falsifiable. Testability is an offshoot of this. It is an assertion that can only be falsified through experimentation. So you're not going to see it in nature. It's not just going to be by observation. It's going to have to be experimentation. So it is a form of falsifiability. Testability is a form of falsifiability, but it is specific. It's a more specific form of it. Okay? Do you understand the difference? If something can be proven false just by observation, we can go outside and go, okay. But if something has to be set up in an actual experiment, in other words, you've got to manipulate things, you've got to do something, then that is testability. That it has to be in that environment. You're not just going to see, walk out and see something in nature and be able to prove this is false. Okay? You're going to have to set it up in an experiment to be able to prove it's false.